Good morning, colleagues and audience members. My name is Ed Ricing. Council. We're here this morning to conduct our 16th work session on City Council Bill 12-0152, which is transform Baltimore zoning. During our 15th work session held on Wednesday, October the 15th, we completed Titles 11, which was the industrial district, which were on pages 167 to 174. Today, we will begin our review of Title 12, which is special purpose districts, starting on line 1 of page 175, and work on as much as we can during today's session, which is 2 hours.
Yes.
The Land Use and Transportation Committee intends to work progressively through the bills by reviewing it page by page, starting with Title I and continuing through the bill in the order it is written. City agencies and the public will be asked to participate by raising their questions or comments as the committee is discussing the page they have a comment or a question regarding. Remember, this is a, can you hear me? This is a work session. It is not a hearing. I encourage everyone to visit the council's website, which is www.baltimorecitycouncil.com, and to stay updated with the section of the bill the Land Use and Transportation Committee is working on at each work session. In addition to the currently scheduled series of work sessions, the Land Use and Transportation Committee will likely hold an additional hearing. Information about those will be distributed to the public as soon as dates, times, and topics are selected. Again, please check the Baltimore City Council's website for the most up-to-date information. If you are unable to attend the scheduled work session and you wish to provide written comments or amendments, please mail it to the Office of Council Services. Attention to Jennifer Coates at 100 North Holiday Street, Baltimore, Maryland 21202, or email at jennifer.coates@baltimorecity.gov. My one and only grammar that I have is please turn off your iPhones, cell phones, Androids, to give courtesy and respect for those who are going to testify. At this time, I want to introduce or acknowledge some of my council members that sits on the committee. To my far left is Councilwoman Ricky Spector, the Dean of the Council. To her immediate right is Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark. The Councilwoman Clark's immediate right is Councilwoman Sharon Green Middleton. To my immediate left is the Vice Chair of the Land Use Committee, is Councilman Jim Kraft. We're also joined by Angela Gibson, who's in the audience representing Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake. We are joined to my far right, Kara Kunst, who is representing the office of the President of the City Council, Bernard Jack Young. To her right is the committee's counsel to the committee, Mr. John Willis. To my immediate right, who is the foundation of this committee, is Ms. Jennifer Coates, who's a staff person. So at this time, we are ready to start on page 175. Go back to that. Go back to that.
Okay.
We, the committee didn't finish the tables on the industrial, if I'm correct, at the last, but we'll go back to that in the future. I want us to go to Council Bill, Title 12, Special Purpose Districts, which is on page 175. So, we'll go through that page, and if anyone has any amendments or questions on page 175, yes.
Give an introduction.
Yeah.
Can I just give an introductory statement?
Yes, go ahead, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Title 12 is special purpose. Just for the audience to understand, this is has a variety of unique zoning districts that by definition have a special purpose. They include some new categories that we don't have today that are very important to our growing city. For example, transit-oriented development districts is a tool that we don't have today, but it is very important for the city in terms of growing and having mixed-use development. We have 4 levels of transit-oriented development districts, 1 through 4, that have different intensities of development that are intended to support our transit stations and have the appropriate design for those areas. So that is a brand new district. Also new are educational and hospital campuses. As the council is aware, most of these major institutions in our city are residentially zoned. That does not reflect the purpose of those districts, of those properties. So we have major institutions throughout the city, hospitals, there are major employers, and our educational campuses, our universities, and some of our larger for the most part, private schools. These campuses are very important in our communities. The current residential zoning does not in any way reflect their use and activities, and we developed what we called special purpose districts to support those institutions. So that is new. The inclusionary housing overlay is really exactly what is in the current code. We did not change that. We are not experts on that and therefore left that as is, so we would defer to law on anything there. The waterfront overlay districts, what is unique in that area is it intends to put together what are currently handled in urban renewal plans. So all those materials are brought in. They were not edited. They were simply brought into the zoning code. And that is really for the convenience of the communities and the property owners. So all the regulations are in one place. And then we had some additional regulations recommended for those waterfront districts where there weren't any, or they modified. Row house mixed-use overlay and detached mixed-use overlay are also new tools. They are overlay districts on existing residential. They can only be enabled by the council. They're overlay ordinances, and they would allow for a mix of uses in row house areas, and it's very limited mapping. The adult use overlay, again, is exactly what we have today, but it's all putting it in one place. So that's just to give sort of a general lay of the land as to how things work. We do have a number of specific amendments. For the sake of time today, we submitted those in writing, so I'm not going to call them out unless there's something needed and related to other discussion in some way, if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're now on page 175, special purpose district, subtitle 1, purpose of title. So we'll start on line 3. Councilman Kraft.
Yeah, the TOD, transit-oriented development districts. I clearly, this is lines 22 to 34, clearly understand what they are, clearly are supportive of transit-oriented development districts. My concern is that we don't have any T, and I don't see any T realistically in the foreseeable future. And when I say the foreseeable future, I mean the foreseeable future. I don't mean,
I think that's a mapping issue primarily, because you can create the districts and then it's how they map them.
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
Okay. There are a lot of permitted usages in the TOD 1, TOD 2, TOD 3, TOD 4 that you may not necessarily want in a certain area. But if you make them TOD because you plan to put transit there at some future time, they automatically become permitted uses.
Okay. Two things on that. I think I understand the question in terms of the mapping, sort of preempting the transit arriving. We have transit certainly in Councilwoman Spector in Middleton's district, and the mapping, a good example is the Reisterstown State Transit Station, the Rogers Avenue, and that's there and beginning a very successful development with the Social Security Administration, and that was actually one of the models that we looked at for that area. I guess the new transit would be the Red Line. We did map to the future Red Line stations. I think we'd be glad to work with the council in terms of a trigger for that to go into place. Maybe the TOD recommendation on a Red Line station wouldn't happen, until like it's, under construction or something along those lines. But to say we have no transit is, we do have stations that are ready today.
Right, and that's what I wasn't referring to the ones that are in existence or, basically there, the light rail and that's already there. I was thinking of more, the
Red Line.
Of development that
Right.
is in the future in these areas. So,
My suggestion would be that when we talk about the maps, we could look at something that has a different zone today, and then, that there's some trigger that says it would switch to the TOD zoning, when construction begins
I don't know
or whatever.
that you want an automatic switch. I think that you might say that you might have something that says, this is an area that is under consideration for TOD, but I don't know that you have an automatic trigger. I mean, talking about the Red Line, is, I've got the Red Line all through my district, and there's, I think, 4 other council members who have the Red Line through their district, but it's still contingent on that money showing up, and
I think a couple things. First of all, we didn't use the TOD zone at every transit station. Many of the stations, for example, the downtown stations, have a very high intensity zoning. So it's been very selectively mapped, and I think we can. I don't know if DOT wants to add to this, but as we've been developing these maps, it's been important in terms of looking forward and the funding that the city is, really moving in this direction to help to get the funding. So there may be a bit of a chicken and egg that we would need to consider in that.
Yeah, 'cause, I have one. I have Cherry Hill and Westport.
Right,
that has
and that's
light rail.
one where we mapped TOD, the one right there in
Cherry Hill.
Cherry Hill, because we know there's development potential. We've had a lot of developers say we'd like to do mixed use. That's a station that could use that development and the jobs that would go with it in that area, and certainly the ones in Northwest. I think. Oh,
Yeah. We are joined by Councilman Bill Henry, Councilwoman Councilwoman Middleton.
I just want to, I think one of the main points is just to make sure that it still goes through the process, through the council, and a good example is of the TOD, the Cold Spring TOD, and we had to do an amendment that is presently going through second reader on the 10th. So we want to make sure we keep that process in play.
Councilwoman Spector.
I just wanted to piggyback on what my colleague is saying. That really is important because that's the way we know everybody gets the community input. when the council person's involved. It could just be happening on paper and nobody knows about it until they see a change. But what I wanted to ask is this: if we live in all is well and the state center comes to pass, is that already a TOD?
The State Center was developed in the first round as a planned unit development. We don't have a TOD zone today, so there is no such thing as
Light rail, or is there a light rail facility there already? Yeah.
yes, the light rail's kind of to one side, the metro's to the other side.
That's what it already exists, and that they were going to build a center around that and create a TOD.
Yes, the design was for a mixed-use development.
That's an example that as it will evolve, hopefully.
And similar, your Social Security site, you know, one half is built, the other half is still to be built.
Right.
And that was a recommendation for that site. And I think Councilman Middleton's example is a good one as well, because because that Cold Spring development is ready to go today, you know, the current site has industrial zone, so we've been working with the councilwoman on a rezoning and a change because we don't have the TOD zone today to use. So we kind of cobbled together with the current zoning to get that correct mix of uses, which is a B with minus certain things, and that's kind of stuff.
But what is so critical is that in that process, we are giving our constituents an opportunity to know they have input.
Right, but
it's their neighborhood, and so they need to know. And it was helpful for me at Patterson and Wabash. It was very helpful that it just didn't get imposed because it's a state thing. That this way, that's what we're protecting.
And I think the Cold Spring community there, I mean, they kind of came to us and said, we love your TOD zone as you wrote it. We wish it was in place today for this development, but instead as I said, we cobbled together what we could to make it the same thing
from our
work.
mistakes that if the state wants to impose something, they don't have to use local zoning. And that's why it's so imperative, because this affects neighborhoods greatly, this transportation anchor.
But that's the whole point, though, is that in the Cold Spring example, they came to you and said, you know, we want to work and this isn't available. We'd like it to be available. We want to move forward with our plan. If we put an automatic trigger in with some sort of predicate, then that's all avoided because,
I agree, except that in the mapping that we did for this city council bill, we used the community plans, the stationary advisory plans that have been worked on over the last, 3 or 4 years for those proposed red line stations. We used those to guide the mapping that is before you.
So
we didn't just make it up.
Okay, so no, I didn't assume you made it up. But what I'm saying is that in every one of those TODs, when we get to those portions of the map, and we're going to make sure that those particular council members in those particular communities are aware that we're on that those TODs are there, and we're reviewing those TODs.
And I think West Baltimore Mark is a great example. Councilman Welsh isn't here, but that was a very intensive community process that resulted in those recommendations.
Okay, we're gonna go on with DOT wants to say something, then we're gonna move on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say it's important to DOT in order to incentivize this development around the transit stations because, we want to get the cars off the road. We want to get people on the trains, regardless of whether it's a light rail, the metro, or the upcoming red line. We want to get people off the roads and on the trains. And to the extent that this automatic development is enabled with the transit-oriented development districts, this helps us get people off the road. So we would strongly favor it being an automatic benefit for this development to happen around the transit stations. Now, I understand the need for community engagement, and we're happy to work with the council in ways to make that happen. But we would really like to see this happen so that we can get the people on the trains.
Yeah. Boy, we know who you are. You want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I'm Barbara Zektic. I'm representing DOT.
Okay. Yeah, Councilman Kraft,
Yes. and I mean, we're really here on the zoning, so without getting into the whole thing about transportation, but, you know, I agree that TOD is a great tool, and I agree that we do have, you know, the metro and we have the light rail, so we already have that, you know, and then we have the red line, right? But, you know, there is lots of other transit-oriented programs that we could be developing where we could be doing this, you know, where we could be doing, you know, dedicated bus lines or bus lanes where, you know, I mean, you know, express lanes. So we're not sharing them with cars and we're not sharing them with parking. So we can move people quickly and get people out of their cars. But the only way we're going to do it is if we can move them quickly and efficiently. Otherwise, they're going to just sit in a bus in traffic rather than sit in a car in traffic. And, you know, if you tie all the TOD development to metro or light rail or the red line, then we're just going to be sitting here forever waiting for more T to be able to get the rest of the thing. So, you know, we need to see more effort from transportation to develop, you know, these alternatives more quickly and be working to, you know, develop more transit options so that we can put this type of zoning out there and use it more effectively and get more people out of cars.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Bob. Anything else? Anyone else want to discuss about on page 175? Now we're on page 176. Hey. Councilwoman Clark?
I do have a couple recommendations, if I may, on page 176.
You want to tell us what line, so we're all...
I will. Page 176, on the sheet, it's Amendment 1. Basically, what this amendment does is say that campus master plans must be approved by city council. And it deletes the section that says that the plan allows for flexibility in the development and expansion of the campus above the base district regulations, only because I'm not really even sure what that means, at what point it means. I mean, basically, my interest here is to make sure city council is the one that approves these things. Likewise, on page 176, line 15 to 19, it's exactly the same amendment for hospitals, putting the council into it.
We have no objection, as it's already intended to be that.
Okay, that's great, and so we're okay there. And then I know that, or I've heard that inclusionary housing overlay, which I misspelled, district, was there already. I didn't know that, but anyway, I think it's time for it to leave. It makes no sense.
So Amendment 3, Councilwoman, you...
Amendment 3 is, oh, I'm sorry, page 176, lines 23 to 28.
You want to delete the entire...
I'm just deleting the whole category called inclusionary housing because it makes no sense. That's a citywide program.
We defer to
The law department?
law and the council. It's really just a cross-reference that's in the existing code, so we were not intending to change it.
Yeah. Law department, you want to
it's on.
respond to Councilwoman Clark?
Yeah, the inclusionary housing law exists in Title 13 in the city code, and it happens when different things are triggered. And one of the things that can be triggered is a significant rezoning. So the zoning code could further define what is significant rezoning. It could have this overlay district, or it could be silent. Either way, the inclusionary housing law would still operate. So if you want to delete it, you could. If you don't want to delete it, you don't have to. If you want to define significant rezoning for purposes of inclusionary housing, you could do that too. I mean, you know, I think they just they just took what was in the existing code and moved it over. But, you
And
know,
it was not, it was like. It's redundant on redundancy.
well, it certainly helps to, if you use it in the zoning context, it helps define what is a significant rezoning in case that matters for inclusionary housing. But you could be getting inclusionary housing for other reasons that have nothing to do with rezoning. That's just one reason.
Of the three things, like cities paying you money, somebody's giving you
Sure.
money, you've got a significant rezoning, or after a certain period of time, you exist.
Right. So if you want the zoning code to define significant rezoning, you could do it, or you could just leave it open-ended and just deal with the inclusionary housing law as you normally do. So
I think that if, that's a whole different, because this talks about overlay districts, and there's no way to overlay unless you overlay the whole city. So if we wanted to somehow define significant rezoning as it applied to overlay, I think we should amend the inclusionary, as it applies to inclusionary, we should go back and amend the inclusionary housing law.
My understanding of the reason they use the word overlay when they put it into this code is really a tracking mechanism, so that if there is a significant rezoning that makes a property subject to inclusionary housing, you can code it and map it as such. So in case it's sold or there's a transfer, it's really just a recordation that property was subject to it.
Wow.
That's really
a lot
what it
of
means.
recordation.
It documents it, and then this is really just a cross-reference, if you read the substance on page 188 of significant rezoning to, as Hillary mentioned, to Article 13.
Well, let's take a look at it when someday when we're back with inclusionary housing. Okay,
Council-
and take it away right now.
Councilwoman Clark, Councilman Henry has a question on that.
Well, actually, I think we're every time I'm afraid that you've gone the wrong way, I realize eventually that you just stop to pick somebody up and then you go back. And so, yes, I'm in the same place where I think that we should not be defining significant rezoning for the purposes of inclusionary housing in the zoning code. That should definitely be a change to the inclusionary housing.
Doesn't define
Right. No, I'm saying we should not be taking this opportunity to do that, and that law should be able to stand on its own without a kind of weird hookup here to the zoning code. So we will definitely take that up.
That's great.
Yeah.
Councilman Kraft?
And my question was to Hillary, and I think
I'm on.
it's answered, but I just want to make sure. If we take it out, if we take the reference out as is being suggested by Councilwoman Clark, I think that it just allows for less opportunity for confusion, because the inclusionary housing law is very specific. It says this: when you say a district, in every one of these other things, you're going to be able to go in a map and you're going to be able to find the district, whether it's the EC or the hospital or TOD. On the inclusionary housing overlay district, you're not going to be able to go on a map and find it. So if somebody goes and starts looking for it, I think you're creating a real opportunity for confusion for
well,
some.
I mean, it certainly exists in the current code. So I think it was, take it or leave it, whatever you guys want to do.
Let's get rid of it.
Okay, thank you.
I have another, that's, on 176, I have one more proposed amendment. I would, on page 176, lines 39 to 44, and then going over to the next page, lines 1 and 2, I would totally delete row house mixed use, whatever, overlay district. I think it's very confusing and not what I would want to spring on my neighbors, that somehow in a secret, in a quiet way, the house that's, or the block across the street or something could suddenly convert to a commercial use and then have an office upstairs. And now, I do later suggest that if you don't have the appetite to delete these two sections, then at least give city council the right to designate all overlay districts, which is coming up as an amendment.
They are.
And then at least we have a choice about where they are. I don't really want any in my district because I think it's very vague and the process is vague, the conversion is vague, and then there's the second floor that kind of follows along with the zoning board's stamp of approval.
These are only established by the council. They won't happen overnight. And they are intended to preserve the character of the buildings where on some of these mixed-use corridors. I would like to suggest that these are map issues that the individual districts should look at as a map item. We believe it's a creative tool for certain areas, and if an area or a district does not want it, it's a map issue. Don't use it in your district.
Why can't you allow the process without creating the district?
The unique thing to an overlay, so
Yeah.
this is best done by example. What we're doing by creating an overlay here is mixing sort of bulk with use in a different way. So by example, the row house mixed use overlay is for areas that are in their bulk, character, and design are primarily residential. You know, there may be 3-story row houses, but they uniquely have ground floor storefronts and are in primarily residential areas. The reason not to give them the commercial zoning, one of my best examples of where we suggested mapping row house mixed use overlay, I think folks would be familiar with it, is the 2400 block of St. Paul Street. A lot of architectural character, row houses, some storefronts, some not residential. A busy street, a street where, you know, it's not maybe as desirable to live on the ground floor because it is a highly trafficked street. The reason not to give it commercial zoning and to use this overlay is to basically be able to blend the use and the bulk. So it allows the commercial uses on the ground floor, but it doesn't allow you to it doesn't allow the tearing down of the buildings and replacing it with like a strip commercial. It's really only intended where you're preserving the character of those buildings, but just want some flexibility in use, as opposed to a straight-out commercial zone, which is typically 1-story buildings, new construction. Another example of the only example of where we mapped the detached mixed-use overlay, I believe this is Councilwoman Middleton's district, is a portion of Liberty Heights Avenue where there's a lot of older houses, but it's in the section where it's not exclusively residential. Some folks are having a hard time maintaining those houses. It's a busy street, and we've gotten a lot of zoning appeals to put a small office in or a daycare or, you know, just some not quite 100% residential uses, and there's been support for that. So hence, that's why we crafted the detached mixed-use overlay. It has a very limited list of commercial uses, and it's intended to be where you keep the bulk standards, so you keep the character of that corridor. And that's the same with the row house.
You don't have to go in front of the BMGA on each one.
Right, for each one, it's an overlay zone, but it keeps the bulk and height. That's why you
Well,
do it as an overlay.
I mean, as I have read the map, and I may be wrong, but I think you recommend that for East Baltimore Street between Linwood Avenue and Highland Avenue.
Yes, I believe
and-
there's a block of that, yes.
It's like
Or two or three blocks, yeah.
three
Mhm.
blocks of it, which when we did the rezoning over there, we didn't do. There was recommended for B1 along there, and we kept it R8 because the people in the neighborhood there don't want all those buildings
Right,
converted
and that's why
to
that's
stores.
exactly why I suggest keeping the tool and making your map changes. We respect that you as the councilman may disagree with our recommendation for the mixed-use overlay on Baltimore Street, that block of East Baltimore Street, but what we were intending there is what we heard out of that debate 5 years ago was we like the building character, we don't mind a few small shops. This tool keeps the building character and has the few small shops, as
well-
opposed to a commercial zone.
Yeah, but
so
when
it's
you-
kind of an in-between.
But when you put the overlay along the whole number of blocks, it doesn't allow for a few small
creeping
shops. It opens
commercialism.
a whole couple of
Creeping.
blocks up.
As I
to be-
said,
to be, to,
if
to
you
be
disagree
converted
with-
into a commercial strip, which is not, which
that is commercial,
defeats the whole purpose. I mean, we don't want, if we wanted to be a commercial strip, we take it back and make it B1 again or C1.
Well, I think you're missing the distinction between the two, and we certainly respect your regard to the map change on that. But we would ask that the council consider it a map item and not throw the baby out with the
All
bathwater.
right, well,
Miss-
Councilman Henry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, just an establishing question because I'm wondering if I have a vocabulary problem here. Overlay district, does that mean that you could not zone just one property, RMU? Well, I think maybe why not do that? I mean, why not open it up to the fact that let RMU be its own category?
We
So-
suggested two tools to
Okay.
do that. The row house mixed use overlay, I believe, is a minimum of 2 block faces. It's intended to be more of a street character issue, so that works for certain parts of the city. Our neighborhood commercial conditional use addresses the one building.
But now I know that
Both tie to architecture.
I know that the whole thing is written from the perspective that there's not a conditional by ordinance.
In
So bear
commercialism.
with me on this. But I mean, listening to my colleagues, I hear their concerns that
Yes, indeed.
you want to say that this is a map issue, and that different council people can deal with it on a district by district basis, which philosophically I'm on board with. I think my worry from a citywide perspective is that you're only giving this to us as a chainsaw and not as a scalpel. And I think that there are blocks where people would be okay with a corner store or a corner coffee shop or something like that, but they don't want to run the risk that the whole block is going to become commercial.
2 suggestions. You can modify the limits of row house mixed use overlay. And we've also have the tool, the neighborhood commercial, which really is designed for the corner store.
And so then that's where you just would do that one building.
Exactly.
The way you
so,
want
and
that
if
one
that, as drafted, is conditional to the board, if you change it to conditional to council, I think that's the tool for that job, and the overlay is the tool for the when it is a 2-block kind of situation.
Well, in that case, I'm just going to take the position now of saying with my colleague from the 14th, with the amendment to remove the inclusionary housing overlay district, I can see that, and I think there was consensus, that there is really no need for the suspenders of having that in the zoning code when we've already got separate legislation that deals with inclusionary housing. With the row house mixed use, though, I really think we should look at this as all of us, I would hope, would want to have the maximum number of available tools for when we're trying to help our district. And so I recognize the fact that there may be a tool in someone else's district that they don't want to use, there may be a tool that somebody doesn't want to use in their district, but I would like to say that we would make as many tools available citywide for the use of other council people if we have the ability to protect our individual districts through mapping.
Could that be done, what the councilman saying, that could be done through map?
Yeah,
map amendments?
absolutely, and it's intended to be. I mean, obviously, we had to submit a map to you for your review, and we made map recommendations. When we get to discussing those, I'm sure, Councilman Kraft is going to be unhappy with the Baltimore Street, and we'll make that change.
Yeah.
We respect that.
Okay, Councilwoman Clark, then Councilman Kraft.
Thank you
then
very
we're
much,
gonna move
Mr.
on.
Chairman. I've already submitted the removal of DMUs and RMUs wherever they have been put on the draft zoning map. Okay, that's already in. But we are here for a moment in time, and then life goes on. What concerns me citywide about this, it won't be in my district. And then, however, if we adopt that we must approve all overlays, that anything like that would have to come back to city council. Let's say somebody wanted an overlay where someplace and there was a bill. Okay, it would have to come to city council. So at least that's two things. I can take them out of my district, and anybody who wants to put them in any place has to come through the city council if we adopt that amendment. What worries me is that it's confusing, and that people in the general public will never we are having a hard time understanding how it works. The general public, when somebody says, we're going to do a DMU overlay down the street, do you mind? Sounds fine to me. What is it? Well, it's nothing. But it is something. And it's hard to understand. And it's hard for us to understand, and therefore harder for people that don't come here every day and try to figure things out. So I think we have to be very, very careful with it. If you're going to, I do have two sets of amendments. I've got get rid of these things, and I've got, okay, you're keeping them. Let's get rid of healthcare centers, and let's do a few other things and approve them. So I'm okay, but I just want to say, by and large, citywide, generically, this is not transparent.
Well, let me just, before Councilman Kraft, I think this committee in the past has always taken the avenue to try to, and the committee members can chime in, that this committee has always taken the eye view or the avenue to try to make it as simple as we can for the general public.
Yeah.
So it's duly noted, but Councilman Kraft, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Trying to follow up on Councilman Henry and with Councilwoman Clark. So on a district by district basis, and I'm going to try to tie Hillary in here. So if you were using the map as a map concept, if I wanted to say in the first councilmanic district, you can't have an RMU. No RMU is allowable in the first councilmanic district. And we could put that into the zoning code that classification is not available in the zoning code,
I think that's what I'm hearing is
the overlay.
Yeah, an overlay is a creation of state law. We've got lots of them. A PUD is kind of an example. It's the tool to use when you You essentially want to rezone a small area. You can't rezone people's property one by one without a potential spot zoning problem. So this is the clean slate you're writing. And now you could rezone anybody any way you wanted in this comprehensive rezoning with the map. You could basically say, okay, you are next door to somebody
No,
who's somebody.
I
right.
got that part.
But once you enact that, that ability is pretty much gone. So your tools are either a conditional use property by property or an overlay. If you go with rezoning one property, you have to follow the same criteria you follow all the time, which is change in the character of the neighborhood or mistake in zoning.
got all
And that is
that.
going to be really hard once you adopt this to say that the neighborhood changed from the 5 minutes ago when you adopted this code, or that there is a mistake you made 5 minutes ago. And so this overlay district fills that tool gap that you might not need it today or 5 years from now, but you could need it 20 years from now in a particular district because the neighborhood has changed. You don't want to go conditional use by ordinance even for every single property in the 2 blocks, but you may not want to rezone each individual one. You might want an overlay. So it's a tool you may not consider using now. You might want it 20 years from now. I mean, if you don't want it, you don't want it. And if you want it to be used in certain districts, you can certainly write that in, but the council 20 years from now could write it out.
So you've given me so many questions out of what you just said because I wasn't going in those directions. So let me pick out one of them right now. So if you don't use the RMU today in the comprehensive rezoning, at any point you could come back in but you'd go through the regular zoning tests at that point.
Sure, you can.
Okay.
Sure.
So if somebody came in and said, I want to put the overlay on these 2 blocks, then they would have to show change, mistake, whatever.
No,
at
not
that
for
point.
an overlay.
Not for the overlay.
But if you wanted to rezone those properties and you did, let's say right now you said, you know what?
No, I'm not talking about rezoning.
I never,
I'm talking
yeah, but actually
about,
you are. I mean, that's the problem here is that if you don't give yourself the overlay district, your 2 options are a conditional use by ordinance or to rezone. And so if you want that 3rd option, you need to put it in the text. Now, you could say this is available in all districts but District 1, and then 20 years from now, in order to use it, you'd have to change the text of the zoning code to give yourself that power and then go use it. This would just prevent that first step.
So there, that's my question.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we said right now that RMU is not available in the 1st council district,
Right.
and then 5 years from now, we decided that we wanted to make it available, then we just amend the text and
Right.
say that it is available.
Right, and you'd need 2 ordinances. You'd amend the text, then the
Right.
ordinance for the overlay. If you give
Right.
yourself that tool now and just don't use it for 5 years, 5 years from now you only need one
if I don't
ordinance.
have the tool right now, then I can't have somebody coming to me and saying, I want it, and I'm saying, I'm not introducing it, and they say, well, how come Councilman so-and-so introduces it in his district and you won't introduce it in yours, and I don't have to get in that argument?
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's more important to you than the 2 bills 5 years from now, go for it.
Right. No, okay, I got it.
But if
I
you
got
do,
it.
but Hillary, if you do come back
You tell them to go
to
the
rezone
town
it,
so-and-so's district.
then you'd have to do a finding of facts on that, but since you're,
Sure. I mean,
Okay.
the state law hasn't changed. If you want to rezone a property, you go through the process from state law.
that's why we're doing the overlay. Okay.
Well,
Right,
we're all
sure.
not going to pick it up. I mean,
I'm sorry. I wanted to go back and check something that I thought you told either one of my colleagues. So, if in one of these overlay districts, can you limit the number of uses? Like, could you say that if you have a row house mixed use area where one of the mixed uses is you could have a 1st floor coffee shop, could you say in this overlay district there can only be 1 coffee shop?
Yeah, I don't see an issue with that. Do you? I mean,
I'm not sure how you would do that. I don't think you can do that in a commercial area. If you're saying the district has 20 properties.
Yeah, if the district has 20 properties, could you put in, when you create the district, could you say that, or how about this? How about there is one coffee shop there? And we're going to pick coffee shops just because they're easy to focus on. And the concern is that the neighbors are like, well, we don't want to have like 17 coffee shops because then, that's not. Can you say, all right, well, so this one coffee shop is here, but you can't have any more coffee shops?
Would that be spot zoning?
Well,
But we're doing it as part of.
I don't know.
I mean, that may, if that's the concern for those 2 blocks, then an overlay district may not be your tool in 5 or 10 years. I mean, an overlay district is essentially your way out of a spot zoning problem. Let's say in 20 years, you've got 2 blocks that really deserve one of these overlays, and the overlays give you sort of a set of uses plus the bulk regs plus the architectural, whatever you want for that little thing. If it's the tool for you, great, it exists. If it's not, you may want to do a conditional use by ordinance for that block instead, so that you don't get 18 other coffee shops. I mean, it's just going to be kind of be hard to answer. I mean, spot zoning is incredibly factually based at the time. So something that may look like spot zoning today, in 20 years may not look like spot zoning because it may look like you're just simply correcting that one property so it conforms with what has now come around it.
Right, but does it count as spot zoning to say that we have this in this grouping right now, we don't want any more of one of them?
You wouldn't, I don't think you'd want to do it I mean, for example, here's the thing. This is the time to decide what you want these overlays to contain, more or less. I mean, you can always go back to the zoning code and change your own zoning code. You could do it 5 days after you adopt this. But you would want that to so if you want whatever it is, the residential row house mixed use to only ever be a district in which there is a limited number of coffee shops, you'd want to do that now. Because if 20 years from now you want to use this tool, but you want to tweak it to only allow the existing person to have a coffee shop, you'd probably do that by basically grandfathering the existing coffee shop and not allowing any more. You would run into a spot zoning problem potentially, depending on how many other people want a coffee shop, how many others there are at the time. I mean, you're not going to be able to know these things now because you don't know 20 years from now. So if you face that problem 20 years from now, you'd come to us and ask, well, what's my best tool so that I can allow Joe's coffee shop to remain, but I don't want Betty, Tom, and Jerry's coffee shops? So that may be a great tool for you, depending on the character of the neighborhood then, but it may not. And so this just gives you a way to potentially avoid a spot zone. I mean, right now you have no spot zoning. You have free reign over these maps. You're doing a comprehensive city rezoning. You could basically make Joe's coffee shop be right there, zoned for Joe's coffee shop as permitted for all time. But in the future, once you start to use your scalpel, as you say, then you're going to have constitutional issues you just don't have right now.
And that was why I was trying to see whether or not the overlays could be used for that, because
it just depends on the character of the neighborhood then.
Sticking with the coffee shop analogy, say, for example, that there are other places in the city where they don't care how many coffee shops they have, but my neighbors do for whatever is our reason. And so it's a heavy lift to try to convince my colleagues that coffee shops as a use should be conditional by ordinance citywide, because that's the way I can get that scalpel. Nobody else wants the scalpel. I want the scalpel. But if we could use the overlay districts in that fashion, then we let the overlay districts be citywide, and that way there's the flexibility that, because this has always been the problem with zoning, is that an R8 on the 2900 block of Baltimore is not the same group of people and the same group of desires as an R8 on the 1100 block of Winston Avenue. And so I can't use a zoning category in and of itself to accomplish this, but it sounded like these overlay districts might be providing the flexibility needed.
Overlay districts, when you create them now and use them later, someone's going to have a hard time making a spot zoning argument because you say, look, this is a tool that this is essentially floating down a little district for these couple of blocks, but we decided in advance what those types of district would contain. So we're not actually spot zoning you, we're just using a separate tool. So that's really what this is, because right now you have the, sort of carte blanche. With the maps, you have a lot of flexibility with your particular neighborhood, but as neighborhoods change over time, people could make an argument, well, you've spot zoned me, and there's all sorts of case law, it's very fact specific. This is one way to try to not do that. But to your specific question, could you make overlays have only one coffee shop in some overlays and not others? Unfortunately, I can't give you a uniform answer. It's going to depend on what's in that particular district at the time you go to use it. Somebody could make a successful argument because there's just no coffee shops anywhere else, and they have some argument. Or there's coffee shops everywhere, and their argument changes. There's no way for me to tell you in advance exactly how that could work.
I just hope, Councilman, you have a coffee shop after all this discussion.
Yeah, and could I get coffee?
Pardon?
I'm kidding.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a Mary or a Sue. It could be a John or a Joe.
It could.
Right? Okay. Councilwoman Clark, you're on.
I do have, I think we've pretty well covered the subject, an amendment to also eliminate detached mixed use on page 177.
Well, before we go on 177,
Oh, okay.
is there anyone in the audience that wants to go, has anything on page 176? No? Okay. 177. it's all
Okay, so
yours.
we've already talked about these. Let me go to after line, page 177, after line 10. I propose to create a new section called Establishment of Overlay Districts. And it says, all overlay districts must be created by city council ordinance according to criteria adopted and promulgated by city council for each district. All, whatever that means, all amendments to existing overlay districts must be approved by city council ordinance, including but not limited to changes of boundaries, land uses, bulk and yard regulations, parking and sign regulations, and the addition or deletion of previously approved properties. So this is a great big tent that covers our powers. It's like a PUD. It sort of turns overlay districts into basically PUDs in terms of the council's authority to create and to amend in any kind of major way.
We have no objection.
Overlay districts, yeah.
We have no objection. That's the intention anyway. It may be redundant to put it here, but I think it's implied, but
Let's have it, yeah. So it's okay. And that's me and until we get to subtitle 5.
Councilwoman, just to clarify, does this
you do.
in effect do away with the distinguishing between major and minor amendments?
Well, no, that is something that we have to determine elsewhere. I mean, I haven't made that. I haven't tried to do that here, and I haven't talked of major or minor. I've tried to be
Well,
as specific.
there
as
are no
the-
major or
well, let me-
minor amendments in
wait-
the overlay.
Wait a minute.
That doesn't exist.
Huh? This says, okay.
I mean, I'm willing to hear your language.
Well, what I'm saying is I'm just trying to clarify. It says all overlay districts must be created. I got that.
All right.
And then it says all amendments to existing overlay districts including but not limited to change of boundaries of land uses, of bulk and yard regulations, of parking and sign regulations, and addition or deletions of previously approved properties. It
Yeah,
says,
I'm thinking about
it
ECs
said-
and hospitals more
it
than
sa-
anything
yeah,
else.
but it
there.
says all amendments, and then it says all those. So whether it would be major, minor, small, large, whatever, by the way this was written, it says all amendments to all of this. It would be inclusive of all amendments. So it wouldn't matter whether they would be
There is no
distinct.
such thing as major and minor in an
I'm-
overlay district.
I'm
All
just-
amendments go to the council, period.
Okay, then that's fine. Okay, I'm just
And
trying to.
I mean, basically, I think it's important. I mean, basically, a lot of these overlays, kind of like once they get constituted, they sort of are defined. So if they need to change, then they should come back.
Okay. I think Councilman Kraft just wanted clarity on the
So we all, so everybody thinks this is okay, if redundant maybe, but it's okay? Thank you. Okay.
Special use. Yeah. Okay, anyone else on page 177? Okay, now we are on page 178. Okay, she don't come back to 183. 178.
I just for the record, note that the Planning Commission did have numerous primarily technical amendments to the TOD, but I won't reread those.
Okay,
And that goes for 178 to 182, I think.
Point of information?
Councilwoman Clark?
We are at some point in the TOD, in those pages, dealing with design standards, which I think we agreed that we're all putting into one big pot to stir later.
Right, yes. Okay.
Good.
179, we will look at lines 1 through 12, which is bulk and yard regulations. Because after that, starting on line 13 is design standards, and we're not going into design standards.
Right, so that brings us to, all the way to subtitle 5, right?
That, yeah, I think that goes to page 180.
Oh, yeah, I see.
But we'll start on page 180 with,
Parking.
am I right? Yes, 180 with parking requirements. We'll start back on the
Right.
parking requirements. Right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to page 180. Line 6, 12-405, parking requirements. We have any amendments? We don't have any council members? Anyone else wants to discuss page 180?
Some of these are,
No? Okay, let's go to page 81.
Chair.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Councilwoman
Here.
Middleton?
The amendments I'd like to talk about, they kind of start on 181, but more specifically, subtitle 5, the educational campuses. But it's, it's under the educational campus district on 181.
So you're
Oh.
looking at page 181?
And that, yes,
Okay.
that
so
page is okay.
That's subtitle 5?
Yes. 183.
Okay, go ahead.
My amendments start on page 183.
Well, let's say, anyone have anything on 181 or 182 before we go on 183? Yes, go ahead.
I noticed that fraternity or sorority houses are listed as a permitted use under EC2.
Where you at on
I'm sorry, on page 182, line 11. What colleges or universities in Baltimore actually have fraternity and sorority houses that they own and are part of their property?
I don't know if any do. This really came to us from a lot of community groups who said if there's going to be fraternities and sororities, we'd rather have them on the campus real estate than in the neighborhood. So we got requests to make it easier to have them on the campus real estate.
Well,
Not that they exist there today
Okay.
necessarily. You know, the few that exist are more in the neighborhoods.
well, the reason I would have some concerns about putting it in at this level is, I have a district with at least with one college that actually owns property right inside a neighborhood. And several of those properties that they own are houses. And I think that I would probably get barbecued if this moved forward in such a fashion that it was completely permitted that those houses could become fraternity or sorority houses without any other review or process.
We have, I don't think planning necessarily has an objection to them becoming, say, conditional or being removed. Again, this came to us from communities who, in their vision, was, if the fraternity is buried in the campus, it's less likely to bother us.
Yeah, and that feeling has been there all. I can attest personally. That feeling has existed in North Baltimore for over 20 years. However, I think we have to figure out a way to tweak this part a little bit. I'll try to come up with some specific language. I'll speak with my colleague.
And maybe it's if it's not on the borders or the boundaries or something like that.
Maybe just have some distance requirements from other from other non-campus residential or something. Because I can get that the idea was if it was buried in the campus, that would be excellent. But if it's on the fringes of the campus, right up against residential, we haven't solved the problem.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
I agree. You need to talk. You should talk to the two colleagues to my left. Okay. That's page 182. Anyone else on page 182? Okay, now we are on page 180. Page 183?
And that's where I'd like to start. I have some extra copies here if you didn't get
Do I have a copy of
that
that?
change
Is that
over
this
here. But while they're giving those out, I'll just give a little, just to refresh everyone's memory. And this process kind of started back when we took our Transform Baltimore hearings on the road. And I think one of the hearings was held on the Johns Hopkins campus one or two times as well. We also have representatives here from the main communities that this does affect. This is involvement with the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 14th district. Mostly the 6th district has the bulk of these educational campuses. And as I mentioned, the communities have had several meetings together and met and came up with 8 amendments specifically for this, and then also some amendments for the bulk regulations and the yard regulations. If you look at the first amendment under 12-503, the Educational Campus Master Plan, and I do want to reiterate that we have representatives here from Winehurst and Roland Park Civic League that.
Let us know what lines.
Okay.
Is that 9 and 10?
Yeah, it's right there. It says 5 days.
183, line 9 and 10?
5 to 8.
Yeah, 5 to 8.
Oh, okay, all right. 183, lines 5 to 8, okay.
And if you look under number 1, an educational facility within the EC1 and EC2 district, take out may and put must. apply to the city council for approval of a campus master plan. Take out that comma and put for any new construction which may deviate from the bulk and yard regulations. And then if you go back to table 12.0502, add for specifically approved sites only.
And that's line 5 through 8, right?
Yes. Lines 5 through 8.
Okay.
For EC Amendment 2, which is page 183, 9 and 10. Once a campus master plan is submitted and approved, the development proceeds in accordance with the plan. Take out rather than and put including with specifically approved sites only, which deviate from is added in there, the basic district regulations, and again, that's 9 and 10. EC Amendment 3, page 183, you add immediately after line 10 this statement, until a campus master plan is approved by city council ordinance. Table 12-502, use bulk and yard regulations apply in their entirely in the EC zoning districts. And then moving on down, 183, lines 12 and 13. For B, applicably and effect. And then number 1, a campus master plan may be applied only to those properties owned by, and you take out or under the control of. So those properties owned by the educational facility at the time of the approval of the plan. That's okay.
Yeah, in this particular case, our amendment should be identical because we worked with each other and with the neighborhoods. So if I might, that
What is this?
page 183, lines 12 and 13, as my colleague has said, a campus master plan may be applied only to those properties owned by the educational facility. We're taking out the control nonsense. At the time of the approval of the campus master plan.
So she go with that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you just, okay, I get it. You get it? Just add an order for that. Okay.
Do you have any more?
So we're now on Amendment 5.
Go ahead. I'm with you.
Lines 14 through 16. B, were okay, an approved campus plan is a permitted exception to all base district regulations of the EC-1 and EC2, including use sign part. We're taking that out.
Delete
The whole sentence.
the whole thing.
Okay, so we're deleting that?
Amendment 6, still page 183, lines 18 through 20. We're basically adding major, and in any sequence major amendment to it. Require approval, add by city council ordinance as a zoning text amendment in accordance with the procedures as applicable.
Of the title.
And then basically of Title 5, Sublet 5 of this
Is there
code.
differences?
Amendment 7, page 184.
You're, okay, you were finished on 183?
Yes.
Okay, so now
No.
now you're on one, huh?
need your sheet.
That was it on Sharon's sheet.
Okay, Amendment 7, 29 and 30.
Basically,
Take out the word delete and add as follows. The campus master plan must include the following: a general range of takeout, the location, add approximate square footage and approximate building height, and then you're adding within a reasonable range of all proposed structures and uses. And
Okay,
again,
wait,
that's,
this is, hold on for 1 second. This is Mary Pat's amendments?
well, they,
Because we were,
they're together.
yeah, we're switching
yes,
sheets.
we,
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what happened here, but
Neither were we.
But one of the sheet I have, there's been just some typographical things
no,
going on.
but this has it all. And basically, what's happening here is let me hit the microphone for a second. So, all right, so on page 183, amendments 7 and 8, it's really adding some language that here. And so, item 3, it's getting just saying the location, approximate square footage, and approximate building height within a reasonable range of all proposed structures and uses. Amendment 8, a landscape plan that, and basically the next, Amendment 8 gets rid of the word general on line 31 and on line 33 to make it more focused and specific.
This it? Okay, all right.
Okay, it's
That's
okay, it's
page
okay.
one- that's all
I
on
think
page
we're,
180. All on page 183, correct?
Yeah, then we go to 184.
Okay, before we go on to 184, does anyone else have any amendments or on 183 from the audience? Or we want to hear from the
Well,
planning
just to
department?
comment, we have no objections except for Amendment 5. I think that would totally defeat the purpose of the zones if they could not, through this campus process, have exceptions to signage, height, or parking. There would be no point to the entire district.
There is a point anyway. Let me just say, may I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. So it's noted the planning objects to the amendment.
Amendment 5.
Amendment 5.
Yeah, exactly. I would expect so. I have to say that I've always been somewhat confused by this whole EC stuff.
It's all new. Okay.
Yeah, it's all new. But basically, I for one, and the community can speak for itself, am not ready to hand off something that then goes into the private sector for eternity to decide on development. So that was on purpose, that it's a good idea to have a plan, it's nice, but if it starts to get changed, we'd like to hear about it and have a say, especially, and you'll see in the bulk rate, in the bulk and yard tables, especially things that are up against the neighborhood. You know, the areas of a campus that are in your residential neighborhood. And that's really what's at issue here. So actually, that Amendment 5 is on purpose, and I think that the community could be happy to speak to it, but that is on purpose.
Okay. It's duly noted, and it's noted that the planning department objects to your amendment. Okay, there's no one on page 183. We'll go to page 184. And this is both Mary Pat, Councilwoman Clark, and Councilwoman Middleton.
Yes,
We both have
back to me.
versions of
I just want to make
same
sure I'm on
thing.
the same
Yeah.
page. Yeah.
So this is Amendment 9, page 184, lines 9 through 11.
This is like a repetition of what we just talked about.
Right, so we want to take out so that the land would be controlled by the campus master plan rather than the base district standards, and add both subject to approval by city council ordinance.
In other words, we don't want this to go off of the base requirements under any circumstances.
Yes, go ahead.
If I'm understanding the amendment correctly, there really is no point to the master plan because you're saying they just have base requirements.
Well, I think the plan, I think it's time to hear from the community, but they're here. Let me say that this is a good opportunity for us to figure out what this is about, actually, and it applies to hospitals too. I mean, what are we doing here, and what is it about? And I think that it is a good practice to work with your EC1s and EC2s to develop, especially the perimeter issues and roadways and things like that, but not to sort of stamp them with an imprimatur and send them off to from that point on to do what they want.
Yeah. Let me just ask for clarity purposes. Regards to this, is that you want to take away the master plan? You want to delete the master plan?
They can have it, but if it gets amended, it should come back to
Well,
us.
it does.
No,
the master-
I understand that, and we have no objection. It is intended to be created by the council, and it would be intended to be amended by the council. But as I read these amendments, you've eliminated or proposed to eliminate any purpose to the master plan because you're not giving the institutions that ability to change from the base zoning. So why on earth would they do a master plan? The intention of the zone was to give a base zone that was predictable and for both neighborhood and institution. And then if the institution wants to vary from the base zone, they would be required to do a master plan that would be approved by the council to vary anything from the base zone. The way I read this, you're eliminating the institution's ability to vary from the base zone, and therefore there would be no point to the master plan. There would be no benefit in having that master plan conversation, which we believe is very important between the institution and their neighbors.
I get that, but the part of the amendment, it put in both subject to approval by the city council ordinance should take care of this, right?
Yeah, but it eliminates.
I'm gonna talk about the rest of it. If you just put both
Okay.
subject to approval.
We have no objection. I think, again, it's redundant, but the intention always is that it's all by ordinance, amendments or creation. So that's not the question we have. It's the control, so that the land would be controlled by the campus master plan rather than the base district. By eliminating that phrase, you eliminate the purpose of the master plan.
Yeah. Councilwoman.
We do have a representative from the community, the president of the Roland Park Civic League. But before she begins, I just like to add a statement that I think is very important to include approval by the city council. And I feel the reason that is put in there because it basically forces the educational campuses to have dialogue and be a part of the community and not try to do things on their own. These campuses are basically stretched to almost the end of their use, and they're doing other things that are not approved by the community. And the community has reached out to these educational campuses many, many times to participate with the community and be a part of the community, have representatives to come to their community meetings. They're in the communities that, where there's neighborhoods and growing families. And it's sad that they're not as involved as they should be. So this is, I see it as a friendly way to help force that participation so everyone is on the same page when changes or ideas or things happen in a community, and they don't try to do things first, and then if the community doesn't agree with it, it's opening up Pandora's box to just start unnecessary things. So that's my statement,
Okay.
and
I
we can take it
let
from
me-
there.
wait. Just to piggyback on the word Pandora's box, this is a work session, it's not a hearing. So I'm not accepting any testimony. If you want to briefly specify on the amendments, that is good, but I don't want to go into a 3 to 5 minute hearing on this. You could ask questions to the planning or, yeah.
That was what I stood up for.
Yeah.
My name is Chris McSherry. I'm president of Roland Park Civic League. I am here with, sorry, my name is Chris McSherry. I'm president of the Roland Park Civic League. I'm here with other community representatives from
Okay.
most of the neighborhoods that surround the schools. As you all know, all of EC1 is basically in North Baltimore, almost all in 21210. So our neighborhoods are the ones that are directly affected.
Okay,
by EC1.
go ahead.
So I think the question is Feinberg raised.
You can't hear her?
And here, is it not
Is it
turned
on?
Is it on? Okay.
You're
All
okay
right.
now, go ahead.
I
Thank you.
think the question that Ms. Feinberg raises about whether or not Amendment 5 would essentially eviscerate the EC1 zoning district designation, that's not, okay. Well, you said there would be no purpose to the,
No purpose of the master plan, not the district.
Oh, okay.
I'm not objecting to I didn't say the district. It
okay,
would-
sorry, misspoke there. I don't think it would defeat the purpose because the master plan could still be submitted by a school with all of their projected construction changes, whatever. The city council would still have to review it, approve it. This just eliminates the language that says that the approved master plan is an exception, because the fear of the community is a school will get an approved master plan and then they'll view that as carte blanche to do whatever they want to do without having to come back to the city council for revisions. And we just want to make sure that it always goes through the city council so that there's community involvement.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay, Henry, then Graham.
Well, I can wait till she's done. My question isn't for her.
Well, I don't. We're not taking testimony. So my question is, so the community believes that they would get more input by using the amendments that are being suggested by the two councilwomen.
Yeah, all the communities fully support the amendments by Councilwoman Clark and Councilwoman Middleton.
Okay, and they think they better serve the purposes of the community.
Yes.
Okay, and they don't think they they don't think they undermine the basic purpose of what's being done here.
No, that's essentially a redundant statement in lines 14, 15, and 16. It's restating what's already being permitted by
Okay.
the rest of the campus master plan language.
Okay, all right. So, okay, are there any other amendments that you feel that are needed there, or are these?
Councilwoman Clark and Councilwoman Middleton, we think, have got it covered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We do have amendments to, excuse me, after text amendments, we do have bulk and yard table amendments too that we'd like in the record.
Okay. Is there anyone else from your group that has a question
I
to
think
the amendments?
Perhaps Jim Detterman would just like to add a little bit to the importance of the community
Okay,
involvement.
That's a question to the amendments.
We got all these, yeah.
So my name is Jim Detterman. I'm the president of the Winehurst Improvement Association. We're 220 families right there at Roland Avenue, Northern Parkway, Charles Street, and Winehurst Avenue. We do come and speak in support of all the amendments that are being proposed today. We do think this would help provide the community with more public process in the planning of schools. There are 7 schools in our neighborhood or around our neighborhood.
Can't testify.
It's got to be a question
So-
to the amendment.
So
Gotta
we're
talk-
just speaking in support of the amendments. I want to answer your question.
Yep.
We do believe that all the amendments would support more public process.
Okay.
Okay,
Do you have any questions?
I did.
Okay.
I-
Councilman Henry, then Councilwoman Middleton.
Wait, are you asking questions of, because I have a question about this for Laurie.
Okay, no, we want to hear questions of the speakers right
You want to hear
now.
questions of the people who are asking questions? I'm just saying, that's how it's been framed.
Hold on a second. Okay. We have Councilwoman Middleton wants to.
I'm good.
You good? Okay.
Yeah,
Councilwoman Clark,
She's going
we'll
to
get
do
to
the
Laurie in a minute.
I'm going to present the EC1 and EC2 Vulcan Yard proposed amendments, and I would like to ask the neighborhood, which were very involved in these, in the EC1 especially, just why, the rationale, the basis.
Okay, did we go over those? I mean, I thought we
No, we
skipped those.
haven't.
Did we skip those for
Well,
now?
we were just getting to them on my amendments on page 4.
Right, but I think we went over page 182. We're going to wait till the chairman comes back with regard to those. Councilman Henry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to make a very quick statement. While, yes, all the EC pretty much is in North Baltimore, not all of it is on the west side of Charles Street. And so there are neighborhoods on the east side of Charles Street that ring EC1 also that have evidently not been part of your conversations. And one of the conversations that we had was that we believed that the point of the way the language was designed regarding the master plan was the master plan offered a reason for the institutions to come to the table and negotiate with the communities using their council people as the, potential stick or carrot, depending on what was being worked out. And if I'm concerned about that these amendments will disincentivize the master plan process, because if the colleges I'm looking at it from the perspective of dealing with Loyola. I've never negotiated with Friends or Gilman or any of the secondary schools, but if they don't get anything out of the master plan, then there is not going to be any reason for them to come to the table and negotiate things that the law can't require them to do. And that's the beauty of it, is that if the master plan allows them to do things, then you can get commitments from them that otherwise we can't require them to do by law.
May I answer that question?
Go ahead.
Thanks. We don't think that these amendments do disincentivize the institutions. They're still, under the campus master plan, they could still come to city council and get variations from the underlying district regulations.
Amendment 5 struck that ability.
No, it just takes out the language that restates it. The ability is still there. It's still inherent in everything else about the campus master plan.
Okay.
Okay, this could be a reading thing. Like, we might just be reading it wrong.
You got to keep
This could be a reading
ladies
thing.
and
We
gentlemen,
might just
let
be
me
reading
just
it wrong.
clarify something on the microphones. It's not just that they amplify your voice. This entire process has to be recorded as a matter of law, so that when you're speaking into these microphones, they are also recording your testimony, not testimony, well, what you are saying. So please make certain that when you are talking into the microphones. Thank you.
So,
My point is that it is inherent in this entire subtitle 5 that they can deviate. It says in 12503A1, which I believe is page 183, lines 5 through 8, that an educational facility must apply for approval of a campus master plan, which may deviate from the bulk and yard regulations. So they can deviate from bulk and yard regulations once they get a campus master plan approved. So
Again, it may be a matter of reading, but I certainly read Amendment 5 as taking that ability away. It talks about applicability and permitted exceptions, and you took that away. So
May I respond?
Can we get the law department to give an opinion?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go to Hillary.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see both sides of it. So legally, it might be a little ambiguous. And so if it's ambiguous, you'd probably want to state on the record, are you intending for educational campus master plans to be a way for these places to deviate from sign parking rules or not? You could do it either way. But I think you could read it both ways with Amendment 5 that Mary Pat Clark is proposing. So I think you want to state on the record which way you intend to go, so your intent governs.
Okay, so before anybody takes this out of my mind, so Councilwoman Clark and Councilwoman Middleton, I think that is what you're saying, Hillary, that legislative intent would be better spelled out in that section with that amendment as to what they want to do?
Even just putting it on the record, are you intending with Amendment 5 that educational campus master plans can no longer deviate from use, sign, or parking regulations, or they can? Because
Here's
I think you
my
want to have that.
and I stand to be corrected by other people who favor it for different reasons. First of all, this is far too sweeping language. It's ambiguous in that it could be interpreted to mean that once you get an approved master plan, you have a get out of jail free card for the rest of your development life. In other words, I see a master plan approved by the city council as having the ability, with public input, council approval, to violate, quote unquote, some base standards and then be approved, but not to then give the institution a right to go off and do whatever it wants from then on. In other words, this is not the approval of a master plan can work with some of the base issues and change them and be approved by council. But it does not give them a right after it's approved to go off and think they have some ticket to violate the base regulations and that have not been addressed. Wait a minute, just hold on, because it's an ambiguous statement. And it is if they want to increase boundaries or to do something different that wasn't explained that's a violation, they need to come back. That's my intent, that it is not the approval of a master plan does not mean you then have the right to, from then on, go forward and be free to override on your own the base requirements.
Hillary, can you
You
before
understand what
Councilman-
I'm
I didn't read the original language in B2 to give them that ability. But if you did, that's yet another instance of the ambiguity. I thought that the effect was once you got an approved campus master plan, that allowed that to be an exemption to the underlying zoning requirements that they already have. That would be the point of the district. So they could come to you and ask about use, sign, and parking. Now, of course, they can't just start to deviate or get a carte blanche because already built in, they have to get your approval.
But
But
that's how
I mean,
they're
if
reading.
that's how you were reading
Can you
B2,
strengthen that? I mean, can you put it in the correct
yeah, I mean,
language
what you
to
could do
strengthen it
instead is
for-
just say an approved campus master plan is a permitted exemption to the underlying districts based, you could, instead of saying base district regulations, you could make it somehow more clear that this is the underlying zoning. Because if you take it out, they may then not be able to change in their master plan anything relating to use, sign, and parking, which is what I think Councilmember Henry was stating.
What I'm saying is they come in, they want to change things. That's part of their master plan. City council says, okay on this, no, not really on that, okay on this, okay. Master plan approved. That doesn't mean that the institution after that can then go forward and on its own operate beyond base limitations. It means that they came in, they had certain limitations, they got waived in specific instances, they went off, they got to develop their campus, but if something else happens like that defies the underlying base regulations, they weren't given the authority to unilaterally just change the law and change those base requirements. They would have to come back to do that. That's an amendment. They get to change the ones we've approved in the plan for changing.
Right, and I think that was the intent of B2, and if you read it differently, we could strengthen it. But if you strike it, the concern is that now they can't use a master plan to deal with sign, parking, or other things that are not
Wait.
bulk and
Let's
yard
not-
regulations.
Let's not get out of control. I think Councilman
The
Henry
may I
has
just
a
say-
question.
The
Councilman Henry
word
has used up
all.
almost all of his daily limit of self-restraint already, waiting, and I still have several meetings to get through.
Yeah, I know.
So if I could say this, Councilwoman, I get your point. I don't disagree. However, going back to the earlier metaphor, we're using a chainsaw instead of a scalpel. They're removing the entire language just creates more ambiguity. What we need to do is we just need to say very clearly that an approved campus master plan permits exceptions to all, any ways, so that it's clear that what the approved master plan is any exceptions to the baseline any exceptions to the bulk regulations and underlying regs that are made in the master plan should be allowed.
Right.
And we're all good with that.
But not all.
You gotta
Right.
use the microphone,
So,
Councilman.
so that's what we're going to do. We're going to rewrite that
Specific.
section to make that clear. We're not going to take it out because taking it out will create more ambiguity.
John,
And
go ahead,
can-
Councilman.
and I would love very much to move on.
Okay, so do I.
Okay.
John, you have something you want to say?
No, I just think we're moving in the direction of rewriting this this section and clause and coming back with language that'll address the concerns of the council. I think we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, may I say something? I think I'll be okay, and I think the community will be okay if we clarify that specific changes to base regulations encompassed and approved in a master plan are fine, but that is not a ticket for any private institution to, after that, waive the regulations on its own. It's not a ticket to
We
ride.
get it. We're gonna need to rewrite that, okay, because we,
Yeah. So that's the concern.
no, I think we get it. I think we understand.
Okay.
Marcia, you have something you want to say? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I agree with the rewrite.
So we'll just do a rewrite. It's almost 12 o'clock. I mean,
You want to finish with the bulk?
so where did you left off? Where we at?
Next time.
We had, when I left for a few minutes, we sort of went from 184 back to 183. I don't like jumping around like that, but.
No,
so
we're
where
back.
we at right now? I mean, you, on your amendment, so we can,
Go back to 12,502.
We were getting ready to do the table for EC1 and EC2. We can wait till next time. And if I may make a request, at the beginning of this meeting, Joan indicated correctly that we did not finish the tables on Title 11.
right.
And next time, can we start with that?
I think I clarified that in the beginning. that
Yes.
We did not, I did clarify that we're gonna go, the next meeting, we will go back to that table.
Right, and
we'll
then
go
we
back to
can,
this.
and then we can kick in then with these 12, unless you have time to take them right
Yeah,
now.
so, I mean, I wanted to limit this to 2 hours because other council
Well-
people have meetings, that's why we
Okay,
stuck with the 2 hours, so, what's that sheet at?
We have 3 minutes.
That's this one here.
God have mercy. We can start with these
Title 11.
next time. Okay. We can start with them next time.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank the community for coming out, supporting your 2 council people. Appreciate that. So does the committee. Our next work session on City Council Bill 12-0152, Transform Baltimore, is Wednesday, November 5th at 5 p.m. And we will start with the table on Title 11.
Okay.
And we'll go from where we left off at today's work session. Thank you. Make sure anything, look around you, anything you brought with you, make sure you take it, don't leave it in chambers. Thank you.